Hello everyone, welcome to BYD Classes. And since last lecture, we have discussed till internationalization of rupee. And today I will discuss from de-dollarization. So let's get started. So why news about de-dollarization? That BRICS countries are thinking about creating a new currency for payments. So first of all, what is de-dollarization? So the process wherein countries tends to reduce their reliance on the US dollar as a reserve currency, medium of exchange, and also a unit of account. So de-dollarization simply means the countries tends to reduce the dollarization of the US dollar from trade. Okay, and it has also gained momentum to undermine the dominance of the US. The status of the dollar was enhanced by the Bretton Woods system, IMF and World Bank, which essentially eliminated other developed market currencies from competing with the US dollar. Russia, China, Brazil and India, BRIC nations are significant economies that emphasizing on de-dollarization. A need of de-dollarization that new emerging economies rise of Asia as an economic powerhouse has raised the importance of currencies like the Indian rupee and yuan. Diversification. Multi-currency foreign currency reserves reduce the pressure on external sector. Promoting local currencies. Trading in local currencies allow exporters and importers to balance risk, have more options to invest, have more certainty about the revenues and sales. Macroeconomic effect. Dominance of the US dollar allows the US to manipulate the global financial system to its own benefit, often at the expense of others, especially in terms of the interest rates. Weaponization of trade. Under this, imposition of sanctions and exclusion from SWIFT. SWIFT stands for Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. So SWIFT is the platform which is only for interbank financial telecommunication, only receiving and sending messaging, and it is a platform of USA. SWIFT creates implement for countries to carry out trade. For instance, sanctions were imposed on Russia after the Ukraine war, Iran after the US withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that is P5 plus 1 nation. Initiatives for the de-dollarization. Bilateral effect. First is bilateral effect. Russia forbade unfriendly countries from settling natural gas contracts in any currency other than the ruble. China has established renminbi trading centers in Hong Kong, Singapore and Europe. Russia-China payment system was set up that bypass SWIFT and combines Russian SPFS, stands for System for Transfer of Financial Messages, with the Chinese CIPS, cross-border interbank payment system. And what are the multiplier effect, multilateral effects? In 2021, the People's Bank of China submitted a global sovereign digital currency governance proposal at the Bank for International Settlements to influence global financial rules via its digital currency, that is electronic yuan. African Continental Free Trade Area is promoting intra-African trade using local currencies. European Central Bank's Target 2 System 2007 enables European Union member countries to conduct trade and financial transactions in euros. Next is India's efforts. The demand for the rupee is rising because of the booming commerce and investment in the domestic market. What are the challenges for de-dollarization? So, availability of alternative currency. No single currency fully meets criteria such as degree of stability, liquidity, and acceptability against the US dollar. Credibility of other currencies. For instance, renminbi in China is pegged to dollar and tightly managed by the government. Also, the Chinese economy is not as open, has trust deficit due to tactics like debt trap diplomacy by Chinese government. Implementation challenges such as financial instability in emerging markets and countries with substantial dollar denominated debt. Increased volatility in currency exchange rates, particularly during the initial phases of transition. Adjustments in the composition of global reserve assets may lead to shifts in capital flows and changes in asset prices. Local currencies may also be prone to wider fluctuations and depreciation as the overseas investor sentiment will not be as certain. And resistance. US and Britain goods system are aggressively promoting US dollar. The other currencies are not able to create a niche in front of the dollar. And fear of financial crisis, issuance of foreign debt in the domestic market may pose risk, especially when the debtor defaults. For instance, financial crisis of the 1980s, 1990s and 2008. Limit over monetary policy. It will limit the country's ability to anchor monetary policy to its domestic economic landscapes. So these are the some challenges regarding the against the dollarization, de-dollarization of BRICS nations. So factors behind dominance of US dollar. First factor is US dollar is believed as safe haven asset. People continue to view the currency as a relatively risk-free asset. Extensively installed base for dollar-denominated transactions. No other monetary system offers an equivalent volume of investment-grade government bonds as the United States. An absence of regulations restricting liquidity and asset availability, including capital controls. And last is about 60% of foreign exchange reserves of central banks and about 70% of global trade is conducted using US dollar. So US dollar is very important in terms of the trade in import and export market. And next is India's forex dynamics. What is the context? India's foreign exchange reserves have been declined to over 2-year low of US dollar 532 billion. And foreign exchange forex reserves composition and management. So what are these? Foreign exchange reserves are assets held on reserve by the central bank of the country in terms of foreign currencies. Dominated by foreign currency assets, it can also include other instruments like bonds, treasury bills, gold reserves, special drawing rights of the IMF, and reserve transit position in terms of Indian forex reserve market. Next is the sum of the common foreign currency assets such as US dollar, euro, British pound, Japanese yen and Chinese yuan or renminbi. The US dollar is most common due to its use in settlement of all international transactions. The four components of India's forex reserves and their share are given here. That is the weightage in the India's forex reserves items. There are foreign currency weighted at 88.7, more than 88%. Next is the gold, more than 7%. And then the special drawing rights of the IMF, that is 3, more than 3%. And then reserve tranche position of IMF, more than 1%. So keep this in mind. Okay, next is as the Central Bank of India, India's forex reserves are managed by the RBI under RBI Act 1934 and FEMA Act 1999. And need of the foreign forex reserves and India's forex trends. What is this context? That is the vital for international trade and commerce. Forex reserves help in supporting and maintaining confidence in the exchange rate and monetary policies, including interventions to support national currency, handling external market risks by absorbing economic shocks from external market crisis, gain investors' confidence, to meet external obligations through forex against any sudden disruption in foreign capital flows, liquidity crisis, means assist the government in meeting its foreign exchange needs and external debt obligations, and maintain a reserve to withstand domestic financial system shocks or any other national disaster or emergency. Before the current decline, India's forex reserves almost doubled in the last 7 to 8 years. So keep this in mind. Reasons behind forex reserve falls: decline in foreign currency assets due to the high inflation and depreciation of rupee as well as US dollar. That is the increment of the US forex reserves interest rates or central banks interest rates. And next is RBI forex interventions. That is, RBI has intervened in foreign exchange market to curb accessibility volatility of Indian rupee. That is, sales or purchases of dollars to smoothen the Indian rupee fall, and high capital outflows due to series of rate hikes by central banks to curb inflation, especially by the US Federal Reserve's. Emerging markets like India are facing higher capital fight to safe havens and weak global outlook. This is due to the escalation of geopolitical risks since the US Russia-Ukraine war and subsequent commodity price rise. The investors' risk appetite has declined. Next is the potential impact of falling forex reserves. Rupee depreciation, high inflation and high depreciation of rupee. Capital controls or RBI's intervention has helped in reducing the trade volatility in the Indian rupee, but still it has depreciated by almost 10% to touch all-time lows against the US dollar. Risk of rating downgrades. The sustained currency reserves decline could lead to downward pressure on sovereign credit ratings. Reduced capital inflows. Already low on account of global slowdown, the investors' confidence may further reduce due to increased external vulnerabilities and reduced ability to withstand them due to rise in current account deficit and falling reserves. Increased vulnerability to economic risks. The debt on Indian companies with high exposure to foreign currency loans will increase. The decline in forex reserves limits the ability to face such vulnerabilities, limits India's ability to help its neighbors. That is, the reduced forex reserves reduce India's ability to open currency swap lines for others, especially our neighbors facing tough times, for example, Sri Lanka. And what are way forwards to tackle the de-dollarization and appreciation of the rupee? With inflation expected to remain high in the near term future, the Indian rupee and the forex reserves are also likely to remain weak. The rising probability of a global recession and India's current account deficit warrants increase in resilience of the Indian economy through fiscal discipline in near term future, building solid foundations through export competitiveness for long term growth, maintaining overall stability and ensuring a healthy coffer of forex reserves. So keep this in mind. Next is the understanding global economy. What is the context? India's External Affairs Minister highlighted that prospects of a global economic recovery remain dim amid supply chain disruptions, prolonged debt crisis, and pressures on energy, food, and fertilizer security. So, reasons for such trends that global economic recovery remain dim. Series of mutually reinforcing shocks. While the impacts of pandemic continue to reverberate worldwide, the war in Ukraine unleashed a new crisis, exacerbated food insecurity and malnutrition in developing countries, and weakened consumer confidence. Rising interest rates and diminishing purchasing power and high inflation have weakened consumer confidence and investor sentiment. Factors contributing to inflation. Factors include demand pressure, supply shocks, and disruptions to both global supply chains and the availability of key commodities. Polycrisis. What is polycrisis? That challenges faced by the global economy are deeply interconnected. So, simply means are deeply interconnected between each other during the challenges faced by the global economy, with all global systems, global political economy, international security, global health, education, energy, and among others. So keep this in mind. That is the about polycrisis. Next is poor financing conditions. Financing conditions have tightened sharply amid high levels of private and public debt, pushing up debt servicing costs, constraining fiscal space, and increasing sovereign credit risks. Climate crisis. Climate crisis is taking a heavy toll on many countries with heat waves, wildfires, floods, and hurricanes, inflicting massive humanitarian and economic damage. Other factors include geo-economics confrontation, natural resource crisis, erosion of social cohesion and societal polarization, widespread cyber crime and cyber insecurity, etc. So trends in global economy. So global growth, that is the plateauing at 2.8% with gradual growth for 2024. Advanced economies 1.3, emerging economies 4.5. So keep this in mind. India is coming under emerging economies, so it will be growing. Global debt. Global average of debt ratios. Public debt as a ratio to GDP approached 100%. So this is a concern, that public debt as ratio to the GDP, that is the approach 100%, like public debt equal to GDP. And next is global inflation. Global inflation will decrease from 8.7% in 2022 to 7% in 2023. So keep this in mind. And what are the measures to strengthen global economy? Improve institutions. To ensure sustainable economic growth, states need to improve their legal institutions, administrative capacities, transparency, and business environment. Next is create an independent sovereign debt authority. An independent sovereign debt authority that engages with creditor and debtor interest, both institutional and private level, is urgently needed. Such an authority should provide coherent guidelines for suspending debt payments in disaster-sustained situations and ensure sustainable development goals are considered in debt sustainability assessments. Establish public debt registry. A public debt registry for developing countries would allow both lenders and borrowers to access debt data. This would go a long way in boosting debt transparency, strengthening debt management, etc. Next is make finances sustainable. The world needs a new financial architecture to shift investments towards research and development, machinery and equipment, infrastructure, human capital, and healthcare. Other measures capitalize on dialogue, multi-stakeholder collaboration, and multilateralism, prioritizing structural reforms to stimulate investment, promote food security, and foster gender equality. Reallocation and reprioritization of public expenditures, strengthening social protection systems, etc. So, under multilateral financial institutions, next is what is the context? India's Union Finance Minister highlighted that multilateral financial institutions need to recalibrate their functioning to remain relevant in post-pandemic world. About multilateral financial institutions. Multilateral financial institutions, also known as international financial institutions, are financial institutions established by two or more countries to encourage international cooperation in managing the worldwide financial systems. So keep this in mind. Eminent international financial institutions include Bretton Woods institutions such as IMF and World Bank, multilateral and regional development banks such as Asian Development Bank, New Development Bank, etc. So these are the multilateral financial institutions. What are the major roles of international financial institutions? First role is to support sustainable economic, social, and institutional development. Next is to promote regional cooperation and integration. Next is to promote balanced economic growth of international trade and its expansion. Next is to reduce global poverty and improve people's living conditions and standards. So keep this in mind. What is the relevance of international financial institutions for developing countries like India? First relevance is financing the development projects. International financial institutions help developing countries to fund capital-intensive activities like infrastructure, energy, education, environmental sustainability. India is the largest borrower from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is headquartered in Beijing. Source of technical assistance. International financial institutions provide technical and advisory assistance to their borrowers and conduct expensive research on development issues. IMF policy-based loans helped Indian economy to move from the license quota permit regime to liberalization, privatization, globalization. So keep this in mind. And overcome disadvantages suffered due to low credit ratings. IFIs borrow funds from international capital markets to lend it to developing countries. Next is responding to challenges. IFIs provide support to developing countries in coordinating responses to regional and global challenges. For example, international financial institutions approved billions of dollars for COVID-19 related support, especially among the low and middle income countries. Support to investors. IFIs help the investors and business leaders in expansion through new fast growing markets. So these are the some relevant points regarding the international financial institutions. What is the multilateral financial institutions and climate change? So for developing countries, multilateral financial institutions flows can help developing countries undertake low carbon growth path, can lead climate finance as they have multilateral financial institutions can lead climate finance as they have capital at their disposal and can raise additional money through international markets. Despite this potential, multilateral financial institutions are plagued by a lack of transparency, tracked, detailed data, and lagging financial commitment. So keep this in mind. Next is concerns related to multilateral financial institutions. Skewed nature. Ownership structure and policy making powers of IFIs are skewed in favor of the developed countries, due to which their advice is perceived as partial and biased. Imposition of conditionality. Some funding agencies have special terms for financing or sourcing of equipment, which infringes sovereignty and are detrimental to interest of the domestic industries. Efficiency in meeting expanded mandates due to a bureaucratic organizational structure, undercapitalization and underperformance in the case of the World Bank Group, non-representative of present realities. There is a long pending issue of underrepresentation of the emerging market and developing economies and the dynamic economies in the IMF's quota shareholding. So keep this in mind. Next is non-performing dispute settlement mechanisms. The biggest structural challenge facing the WTO today is the atrophy of the appellate body of the WTO dispute settlement system due to the United States blocking consensus on appointment to the appellate body. What are way forwards to retain relevance of international financial institutions? Aging out of direct and indirect conditionalities with no size-fit-all approach by World Bank and IMF. Next is introduce changes in internal administrative laws and subject themselves to external oversight for better transparency and accountability. Governance reforms. Institutions need to increase representation of developing nations for a greater diversity of perspective and a more balanced approach. Next is strengthening of new financial institutions like New Development Bank to diversify options and promote South-South cooperation. Post-COVID recovery, IFIs should focus on development of local markets, building self-reliance for developing countries, resulting in a resilient and sustainable recovery from the pandemic. Next news is global debt management. What is the context? International Monetary Fund (IMF) has called on the G20 nations to understand and manage global debt at first G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting under the G20 Indian presidency. So keep this in mind. Condition of debt sustainability. The country does not need to default or renegotiate the loan terms. So keep this in mind. Okay. Sovereign debt vulnerability, debt sustainability. Sovereign debt vulnerability refers to the risk that a country will violate the solvency and liquidity conditions and enter a crisis. Each country has its own debt vulnerability threshold based on factors such as current debt, economic policies, governance strength, loan terms, etc. A debt is considered sustainable if it meets the conditions as given here. So these are the conditions. Okay, so remember this. Next is steps taken to address this debt distress. Global sovereign debt roundtable. The objective is to build greater common understanding among key stakeholders involved in debt restructurings and work together on the current shortcomings in debt restructuring processes. Common framework for debt treatment beyond debt service suspension initiative and agreement of G20 and Paris Club countries to coordinate and cooperate on debt treatment for up to 73 low-income countries that are eligible for debt treatments beyond debt service suspension. Reasons behind current debt unsustainability and its impact. So high debt exposure of countries, especially the low and middle income countries, leading to sovereign debt vulnerability. As per IMF World Economic Outlook, January 2023, 15% low-income countries are in debt distress. Additional 45% at high risk and 25% emerging market economies also at high risk. Slowdown of global growth in 2023. It can leave too many people in too many countries struggling to make ends meet. Resurgence of COVID-19 pandemic, especially in China in 2022, dampening global growth. COVID-19 is estimated to push over 100 million people into extreme poverty. Okay, elevated inflation, especially sharp increase in food and energy prices since the Russia-Ukraine war has resulted into the cost of living crisis. Rise in central bank rates, tightening of the financial conditions. The problem is more severe in developing and low-income countries due to their limited policy space and huge development needs. And what are the weaknesses in current debt management architecture? The regulatory and supervisory deficiencies, which limit the International Fiscal Association success in ensuring global monetary and financial stability, that is avoiding the repeat of crisis. Lack of comprehensive and reliable early warning systems, and issues in global financial safety net or debt architecture such as delays and inadequacy of financial assistance from multilateral institutions, especially from IMF, due to heavy negotiations at the bilateral and multilateral levels. For example, Sri Lanka and Pakistan yet to get a bailout package from the IMF despite acute economic stress in both these countries. Next is absence of an effective debt resolution mechanism. Due to absence of an effective mechanism to involve the private lenders in resolving crisis. For example, only one private creditor participated in the DSSI initiative. So keep this in mind. Okay, use of one-size-fits-all policy recommendations and the accompanying conditionalities by multilateral lending institutions. Initiatives to address sovereign debt vulnerability. What are the initiatives? That is, first is IMF approved US dollar 272 billion to 94 countries since start of pandemic, of which 57 were low income countries. It also started food stocking window to tackle the global food crisis, and the G7 announced partnership for global infrastructure and investment to meet the infrastructure needs of low and middle income countries, and G20 established debt service suspension initiatives in May 2020 and led common framework for debt treatments beyond DSSI with Paris Club countries. And last is World Bank initiative deployed over 157 billion to fight economic, social and health impact of COVID-19. So these are the debt of these institutions or initiatives to address sovereign debt vulnerability by these institutions. So keep this in mind. And next problem is further aggravated by the weak institutions and vulnerability in many emerging market and developing economies. That is, next is way forward. Creating a strong and effective global financial safety net with a strong quote-based and adequately reduced IMF at its center. Building long-term resilience of the International Fiscal Association, including by promoting sustainable capital flows and developing local currency capital markets. Expand the common framework's eligibility requirements to cover more highly indebted and vulnerable low middle income countries. Boost multilateral development banks, lending resources, knowledge support, etc. based on their involvement in development financing. Ensure a transparent and stable global financial system to minimize the risks of crisis. Conduct a fair, objective and in-depth analysis of the reasons for the current crisis. Involve private sector in crisis prevention and resolution mechanism for an equitable burden sharing between the sovereign debtors and lenders in the event of crisis. Strengthen IMF surveillance system for an early detection of financial risks and proactive management of distressed loans. So keep this in mind. And what are the India's role as voice of global south? To engage international institutions and individual countries to encourage sound macroeconomic policy. Encourage sound macroeconomic policy making based on international standards and best practices. To prudent financial regulation and supervision along with institutional market infrastructure on insolvency, corporate governance, accounting, auditing, etc. And assistance in broadening of tax base to ensure adequate reserves in case of economic crisis. And last is work towards an effective, powerful systemic stability regulator for crisis prevention, management and resolution. So these are the India's role to voice of global south. Next is World Trade Organization, that is WTO. What is the context? The WTO said that India violated its zero tariff commitment under the Information Technology Agreement, that is IT agreement. What is the importance of WTO in global trade? So data about WTO, that WTO is by far the largest trade body in the world. It encompasses more than 85% of population in the world and 95% of trade. So these are the facts, so keep this in mind. Next is transformed international trade. Binding rules for global trade have facilitated dramatic growth in cross-border business activity. Rise of global value chains. The predictable market conditions fostered by the WTO have combined with improved communities to enable the rise of global value chains. Next is non-discrimination. The WTO promotes the principles of non-discrimination among its members. Most favored nation principle, national treatment principle. So these are two principles which are regulated by the WTO. And special provisions for developing and least developed countries. The General Agreement on Trade and Tariff and the General Agreement on Trade in Services allow developing countries some preferential treatment. The WTO provides technical assistance and capacity building programs to help developing and least developed countries participate effectively in global trade. Next is global cooperation. WTO membership encourages global cooperation among countries. It provides a platform for member countries to engage in discussions and negotiations on various trade-related issues including agriculture, intellectual property, services and investment. Dispute resolution. WTO's trade dispute mechanism has been used extensively, helping to avoid unilateral responses to disputes. What are the key achievements of WTO? What are the agreements of WTO in terms of the trade? So first is the agreement on agriculture and TRIPS, that is trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. The agreement on technical barriers to trade and trade facilitation agreement. The general agreement on trade in services GATS. The agreement on trade related investment measures TRIMS agreement. The agreement on application of sanitary and phytosanitary. So these are the key agreement between WTO and among its members. So keep this in mind. What are the issues with the WTO? Negotiation deadlocks. Consensus based decision making process has often resulted in negotiation deadlocks, making it difficult to reach meaningful agreements on critical issues such as agricultural subsidies, intellectual property rights, and market access. Developing countries' concerns. Developing countries argue that developed countries tend to dominate negotiations and have an advantage in shaping the rules of their benefits. Rising protectionism and bilateralism. In recent years, there has been a rise in protectionist measures and a shift towards bilateral or regional trade agreements which bypass the multilateral framework of the WTO. Next is emerging issues. Concerns that WTO has not kept pace with 21st century trade, which requires new or updated provisions in multilateral agreements. That is, since 1995, such as linkages between trade and climate change, sustainable development goals, gender issues, and human rights. So these are several issues under WTO. Members' development status. Concerns have been raised regarding ability of certain members to self-designate as developing countries and thereby to benefit from special and differential treatment. That is, China claims that it is developing country but not a developed country, and India also is ongoing path. Dispute settlement crisis. The WTO dispute settlement is in crisis as the US blocked appointments to the appellate body. What are the measures to reform WTO, making dispute settlement mechanism work? WTO rules are applied consistently across members. Earnest efforts will be made in this regard. Improve transparency to enhance legitimacy. It requires refraining from mini ministerials or green rooms which excludes members of critical decisions, foster suspicion among members. Institutional reforms. To improve the WTO's decision-making process, some reform proposals have called for the creation of an executive committee. So keep this in mind. Balancing demands. The WTO must balance the demands of 21st century trade and unresolved old trade issues. Due voice to small countries. There are less voice of small countries in WTO platform as included in the cornerstone principle of consensus. Respect views of all members, even the smallest ones. This also means that political and economic pressure should not be applied to force a country to agree to decisions completely adverse to its fundamental interests. Next topic is agriculture and its allied sectors. And what are the agricultural inputs? Under inputs, first input is soil. What is soil? That is, soil supply essential nutrients, water, oxygen and root support that food producing plants need to grow and flourish. And what are the challenges to protection of soil? Decline in soil organic matter, poor soil fertility, decline in soil physically conditions such as structure, stability, etc., acidification, salinization, alkalinization, and waterlogging, and introduction of poor lands into agriculture, weaknesses of soil testing service, ad hoc fertilizer prescriptions. So these are some challenges regarding protection of soil or unfertile or erosion. Next is the measures taken by the government to protect the soil health. That is, first scheme is soil health card scheme for effective soil health monitoring and management. Next is Rashtriya Krishi Vigyan Yojana to protect the loss of topsoil, improving soil fertility. Next is NABARD loan soil and water conservation scheme under the Rural Infrastructure Development Fund. Other related initiatives under National Food Security Mission, National Horticultural Mission, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, etc. Next is the possibilities going forward. So revamping soil testing services, that is the increasing soil testing services as more as possible, strengthening a soil health card scheme, promoting balanced and integrated use of fertilizers, enhancing nutrient use efficiency through precision nutrient management, enhance awareness of farmers, promotion of community level mechanized compostings. So keep this in mind. And next input is water. Conservative and efficient use of water is important to increase farming intensity, high productivity and farm income, and to ensure sustainable agriculture development and food security. So keep this in mind, the definition of water, that usage of water. What are the challenges regarding water use efficiency? The general scarcity of water and regional imbalances, sustainable area under rain-fed cultivation, suboptimal utilization of existing irrigation facilities, poor irrigation efficiency, poor quality of water used in cultivation, and high use of water in non-agricultural, non-irrigated areas. And next is the measures taken by the government to tackle the water spill in the irrigation field areas. Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana to provide assured irrigation to cultivated areas, reduce wastage of water and improve water use efficiency. And Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee for creating a small irrigation infrastructure during rainfall or during monsoon season. Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, under which funds are provided for water conservation and management activities. Next is Atal Bhujal Yojana for sustainable management of groundwater with community participation. So keep this in mind. What are the possibilities going forward? That is, how can water protect for irrigation purposes or for other purposes. So addressing the problems of overexploitation of groundwater, irrigation development in eastern and northeastern region, promoting conservation agriculture, extensive promotion of organic farming and composting, and crop alignment and diversification with agroclimatic status, and new technology can be adopted like drip and sprinkler irrigation facilities for healthy development of the irrigation facilities in the rural as well as urban areas. Next input is seed. So use of quality seeds can increase productivity, can help in meeting country's food and nutritional security need, and improves the response of all other inputs. So how can seed be used in effective manner, and what are the challenges associated with seed production? The seed production major issues are quality, price, and availability of seeds. Today progress of seed delivery system, poor soil fertility, certified or labeled seed availability is only around 35 to 40%. Poor assessment of seed requirement, and technology to preserve the seed. For sowing purposes, what are the issues with seed certification? Unpredictability of demand of certified seeds. Short shelf life, certified seeds are only good for one season, and lack of access to certified seed due to infrastructural gaps, lack of effective monitoring to control seed quality. So these are the some issues regarding seed. What are the measures taken by the government to preservation of seed? First is National Seeds Corporation in 1963, High Yielding Variety Seeds Program 1966-67, National Seed Policy 2002, various legislative measures such as Seed Act 1966, Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001, the Essential Commodities Act 1955. And next is Submission on Seed and Planting Material under National Mission on Agriculture Extension and Technology, Seed Village Program 2005, other initiatives such as establishment of seed banks and seed grid, and Sathi program stands for seed. Sathi portal stands for seed traceability, authentication and holistic inventory portal. So keep this in mind that the measures taken by the government for seed preservation. Next is the way forward. So assessing seed requirement, seed production and supply chain is required. Integrating forage crops into effective seed chain to support dairy and livestock sector. Enhance seed replacement rate of all self-pollinated crops like paddy. Establishment and upgradation of seed processing and storage plants. Developing strong seed production chain for climate resistant nutri cereals. Explore opportunities for seed exports. Decentralize and broad-based the seed production platform. Community seed banks for promoting of local varieties. Cost rationalization of certified seeds, and seed preservation for future like seed vault, created in Ladakh as well as seed vault created in uh, the country of Norway. So keep this in mind. And encouraging ideas like open source seed movement, which states that physical traits of plants cannot or should not be owned by individuals or corporations. So these are the way forward for seed preservation. Next is the agricultural mechanization. So data about agricultural mechanization or status of India's farm mechanization. So Indian farm mechanization level is at 40 to 45% compared to USA 95%, Brazil 75%, China 57% according to NABARD 2018. So this is the data. You have to remember this. And India's farm equipment market is 7% of global market, with more than 80% of the value contribution coming from tractors. Trade surplus in non-tractor farm machinery is very small. India is resilient on low-grade equipment or imports. So these are the fact information that you have to remember this. Next is challenges in farm mechanization. Small and fragmented land holdings, practice of subsistence agriculture, and low awareness, that is the traditional agricultural mechanism, diverse soil conditions and cropping pattern, lack of access to power, process of acquiring farm equipment is tedious and cumbersome, unaffordable cost of equipment and reluctance of banks to lend to farmers, inadequate quantity and quality of service centers for proper maintenance, mismatch between needs of Indian farmers and what farm machinery sector is producing, limited research and development in non-tractor farm machinery. So these are the some challenges regarding the mechanization of farm sector. Next is the government interventions or government initiatives to become a healthy farm mechanization. So first is some mission on agricultural mechanization. Major objectives under it: promoting custom hiring centers and high-tech hubs of the high-value machines, ensuring performance testing and certification, and creating awareness. E-national water resource to facilitate finance against electronic negotiable warehouse receipts. So keep this in mind, electronic negotiable warehouse receipt. Farm mechanization key objective in schemes such as Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, National Food Security Mission, Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture, etc. Next is other benefits provided under the various schemes such as Land Conservation Department offers 90% subsidy to the women establishment for purchasing of machines. State governments such as Kerala, Madhya Pradesh are providing farm machinery at concessional rates. So these are the government initiatives. What are way forward? Subsidize farmers on consistent basis, farm mechanization and procurement and renting of heavy farm machinery, simplification of process for getting loan and increase in financing options. Process of applying or receiving subsidies should be streamlined, simplified and digitized as done in Odisha. Create an institutionalized framework for highly unorganized CSCs. Extension programs for farmers need to be strengthened. Agricultural universities or institutes should be identified and assigned responsibility for research and development. Logistics need to be improved, especially for transporting heavy machinery. Level playing field for Indian manufacturers. testing, specification, standardization, and performance requirements and regulations will be developed in line with global benchmarks. So these are some way forwards to the mechanization of farming sectors. Next is the agricultural credit. So what is the context? Every 1% increase in agricultural credit produces 0.29% increase in agricultural GDP and consequently adding in increased income. What are challenges regarding agricultural credit? High dependence on non-institutional channels, poor share of investment credit, regional imbalance in credit disbursement and skewed credit distribution, anomalies in the priority sector lending in agriculture, diversification of agricultural loans for non-agricultural purposes. So these are the challenges to the agricultural credit. Measures taken by the government to enhance the agricultural credit for the farmers. Policy of doubling the income of farmers by 2022. Dedicated long-term irrigated fund with NABARD. Unified agricultural marketing e-platform Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi PM Kisan and Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So these are the three schemes. And next is the Kisan Credit Card scheme for hassle-free loan to small and marginal farmers, and including all those farmers, and this scheme cannot be mandatory for any farmers unlike earlier modified interest subvention scheme to provide short-term credit to farmers at subsidized interest rates. So these are the measures. Next is the way forward. Dispensation of long-term credit to boost capital formation, which are private sector leads over the government sector in terms of the capital formation. Like private sector is 14 to 15% and public sector is hardly about 7 to 8%. Share of loans to SMF in total loans to agriculture to be reached. A special focus on eastern, centrally, hilly and northeastern states to tackle regional imbalances. Enhance farmer inclusion process. Encourage aggregation or collectives of farmers or farmer producer organizations. Promotion of joint liability groups as an alternative channel. Access to infrastructure and common assets. Training and skilling. Primary agricultural credit societies. What is the context? Cabinet cleared a plan for setting up 2 lakh primary agricultural credit societies, dairy, fisheries, cooperatives in the country in the next 5 years. Plan is what? At strengthening cooperative movement in the country and deepening its reach up to the grassroots. It will establish primary agricultural credit societies and viable dairy cooperatives in each uncovered panchayat or village, and viable fishery cooperatives in each coastal panchayat or village, as well as panchayat or village having large water bodies. Primary agricultural cooperative societies or dairy or fishery cooperative societies would be linked with their respective district and state level federations. So keep this in mind. By leveraging the whole of government approach, these societies will are able to set up and modernize necessary infrastructure for diversifying their activities, like milk testing laboratories, bulk milk coolers, construction of biofloc ponds, fish kiosks, etc. What is the significance of the plan for primary agricultural credit societies? The move is significant as there are still 1.6 lakh panchayats without primary agricultural credit societies and nearly 2 lakh panchayats without any dairy cooperative society. It will provide farmer members with requisite forward and backward linkages and enhance their income. So keep this in mind. It will also help in generating employment opportunities in rural areas. What is about primary agriculture credit societies? So PSCS constitute the lowest tier of the short-term cooperative credit structure in the country. Regulation: they are outside the purview of the Banking Regulation Act 1949 and are not regulated by the RBI. What are the functions? Other than short-term credit, they can also provide other input services like seed, fertilizer, pesticide distribution to member farmers. What is the cooperative agriculture credit structure? Short-term credit, 3-tier system, long-term credit, 2-tier system. So keep this in mind, 2 system. First is based on 3 system, second is based on 2-tier system. In first 3-tier system, state or central cooperative banks, district central cooperative banks and primary agriculture credit societies. So these are the 3-tier system in the short-term credit. Okay, in the long-term credits there are 2-tier system, that state or central cooperative agriculture rural development bank, and second is primary cooperative agriculture rural development bank. So keep this in mind. What are the significance? They ensure financial inclusion of the most vulnerable rural population. Primary agriculture credit societies account for 41% of the KCC loans given by all entities in the country, and 95% of these KCC loans are to the small and marginal farmers. Key challenges of primary agriculture credit societies. Technology: most of the PSCS have not been able to adapt to efficiency, profitability, technology of other financial institutions. Credit share: over time, share of credit cooperatives in rural credit have declined to 1/3 from the share of more than 60% of in the 1950s. Resource dependency: traditionally, PSCS have only been in the business of credit dispensation despite the mandate to provide other services. Next is the competition. PSCS have to compete with farmer producer organizations that are providing critical non-credit services like farm advisory, quality input supply, processing, input marketing, etc. Next is impaired governance standards. Lacks corporate governance standard combined with the political influence and interference is the reason for subpar performance of cooperatives, and lack of fair credit as a fair audit mechanism. Delay and irregular audit impinge upon the democratic spirit of cooperative movements. Lack of awareness among the people. Most of the people are not well informed about the objectives of the cooperative movements, the rules and regulations of cooperative institutions. Next is regional imbalance in growth. The cooperatives in northeastern states and in areas like West Bengal, Bihar, Odisha are not as well developed as the ones in Maharashtra and Gujarat. Next is the key initiatives to make primary agriculture credit societies viable. National Cooperative Development Corporation helps in planning and promoting programs for agriculture produce. Computerization of PSCS to increase the efficiency, transparency and accountability in their operations. Model bylaws of PSCS to enable them to undertake more than 25 business activities such as dairy, fishery, etc. Next is enable primary agriculture credit society to provide service offered by common service centers. So keep this in mind. What are the way forward for Primary agricultural credit societies, resource mobilization properly, diversify business portfolio, invest funding from agriculture infrastructure fund could be used for creation of various need-based infrastructure facilities. Next is democratic spirit. Elections should be held regularly and directors and CEOs should be appointed on the basis of professional competence and integrity and merit. And next is transparency is necessary for regulation of the primary agricultural credit societies organization, and it can be held through computerization of all institutions under the three-tier structure should be achieved quickly. And last is infrastructure. Digitization, especially in governance, banking, and businesses, can ensure a transparent, accountable, and efficient system. So keep this in mind. Next is the agriculture marketing. What is the context? Agricultural marketing can be simply defined as the commercial functions involved in the transferring agricultural products from producer to consumer. So this is the agricultural marketing definition. So keep this in mind. Simply means transferring agricultural products from producer to consumer. What are the importance of agricultural markets? Monetization of agricultural produce in the market, acting as a source of market information and price signal, reducing the role of intermediaries, encouraging capital formation and investment in technology, value addition in agriculture by providing production with forward and backward linkages. So keep this in mind, that importance of agricultural markets. What are the issues faced by the agricultural markets in India? Institutional issues like licensing barriers for new trades for entering the markets, high incidence of market charges including APMCs, and absence of standardized grading mechanism for the produce. Infrastructural issues like limited access of agricultural produce markets in some parts of the country, poor infrastructure in agricultural markets such as drying yards or cold storage and lack of warehousing, and long gestation period and economic unviability of agricultural infrastructure projects. And next is the use of gunny bag from the made up of the jute that used for preservation of the grain in the market areas, need of the steel container for preservation of seeds as well as food grains. And next is market information system issues like absence of efficient real-time informational channels leading to lag in demand signals, limited information and content is available to farmers, and lack of awareness among farmers which awaits the new information channels. Other issues like absence of a national integrated market despite a large physical network of APMC and limited public investment on marketing infrastructure development. What are the potential effects of agricultural reforms on these issues? So first is checking monopolies by creating an ecosystem where the farmers and traders enjoy freedom of choice of sale and purchase of agri produce. Taking forward the idea of one nation, one agri market by abolition of market fee and giving permission for electronic trading of agri produce. Encouraging private sector participation to boost contract farming. And better inventory management of agricultural produce due to removal of restrictions through on storage of food commodities, improving price discovery and realization for farmers by creating alternate and direct channels of marketing which decreases the interference of just a minute. Decrease of interference of the government or any civil society organizations. Okay, so keep this in mind. What are the way forward to ensure holistic reformation of the market? Reforms in APMCs like appointment of an independent regulator and encouraging private sector participation in APMCs through private wholesale market, unified single registration, etc. Creating a national integrated market via extending the electronic national agricultural market e-norm by creating a third party assessment certification, encouraging involvement of farmer groups and other intermediaries. Next is promotion of investment in marketing infrastructure development by creating a long-term national policy on storage and movement of agricultural produce, increasing infrastructure investment in Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, and promoting states to promote PPP purchasing power public-private partnership model for infrastructure development, creating more robust information dissemination systems by popularizing more accessible methods catering to personalized information needs via mobile devices and providing farmers a broader set of information. So keep this in mind. Next is rationalization of market fee or commission charges maximum 2%. And implementation of market yard national importance to promote inter-mandi or interstate trade as highlighted by the report of expert committee. And under this agricultural marketing, there are agricultural derivatives and agricultural prices. What is the context? The SEBI has extended the suspension on derivatives trading of 7 agricultural commodities for one more year till December 2023. What is the derivatives? Agricultural derivatives mean those commodity derivatives, the financial terms of which are determined by an underlying agricultural products. So those agricultural commodities which are under agricultural products include primary agricultural products such as chana, cotton, guar seed, maize, soybean, sugar, etc. Next is processed agricultural commodities like guar gum, palm oil, soybean oil, etc. are also considered as agricultural commodities. So keep this in mind. What is a derivative? So understand this. A derivative is a financial security with a value that is reliant upon or derived from an underlying asset or group of assets. That is stocks, bonds, commodities, currencies, interest rates, and market indices. So these are the some derivatives and types of derivatives. Future contract. A future contract is an agreement between two parties that gives the holder the right to purchase or sell the underlying asset for a specified price on a specific date. Next is swap contract. Swaps are derivative contracts with two holders will exchange the obligatory financial terms of the contract. Next is options contract. Options contracts are derivative contract that give buyers the right to buy or sell the underlying asset on or before a specified date. Forward contracts are derivatives that are similar to future contracts but are sold over the counter rather than through an exchange. So exchange under the SEBI and over the counter under the out of the SEBI platform, that is purchased by the private members as well under the over the counter. Okay, so these are the derivatives, that is future, swaps, options and forward. So keep this in mind. Okay, next is price determination of agricultural products, farm gate, selling price of farmer, load consolidation and packaging cost, and last is margin of aggregator. Primary market, mandi fee as at percentage, margin of consolidator or aggregator, labor for material handling. And next is terminal market, labor for material handling fee and labor for material handling fee and commission percentage, wholesale margin at percentage. What is the retail cost of wastage at retail, last mile, repack cost, plastic retail, retailer's margin. So these are the some price determination of agricultural products. How they influence agricultural prices. Price signals. A well-functioning derivatives market can send strong price signals for agricultural commodities that can abridge the major information asymmetry on future price uncertainty faced by farmers. Transfers risk. The risk is transferred from the farmer to the market participants who are willing and capable of taking risks for a premium. And next is seeds users. The presence of a derivatives market helps in checking unbridled price increase by halting upward movement of prices. Presence of a derivatives market thus shields commodity users from price risks. Okay, what are the factors that constrain role of agricultural derivatives in influencing agricultural prices? Is low trading volume. Share of agricultural commodity futures in the local total volumes declined steadily from over 60% in 2004-5 to about 8% in 2021-22. Lack of transparency. Spot trading in most agricultural commodities is done in an opaque and decentralized manner in mandis. Regulatory uncertainty and ad hoc policy actions tends to impact trading sentiments and volume considerably. Unorganized physical markets. Challenges associated with the highly unorganized underlying physical markets are weighing down trading in domestic agricultural commodity derivatives. Next is what are the way forwards. Restoring confidence among participants. A streamlined regulatory framework will ensure that drastic measures like banning futures and options trading will be limited to exceptional circumstances. Expedite agricultural market. The ENAM project that seeks to create a single national market through a pan-India all the existing APMCs mandis electronic trading portal should be expedited. Create adequate infrastructural facilities. There is a need for adequate grading and standardization facilities to ensure that quality of the aggregate produce of commodities is maintained. Unified market to increase participation. A unified electronic spot market for agricultural commodities will create a strong base for agricultural derivatives trading. Address information asymmetry. Create agricultural information system providing comprehensive information on all the agricultural commodities accessible to all market participants. So these are the some way forward or measures to reform in the agricultural derivatives and agricultural prices. And next is the financial support to farmers. What are the context? Status of financial support to farmers. More than 11.60 crore farmers have been given the financial benefits of approximately rupees 1.60 lakh crore. Overall, 2 to 2.5% of GDP is provided as subsidy annually in the form of fertilizer, credit, crop insurance, and price support subsidies. One-fifth of the aggregate farm income is in form of subsidies. 50.2% of the agricultural households are under some of the kind of debt. About 70% of the loan taken by the farmers were from institutional sources, which are interested paid by the farmers at the high cost. Key objectives of the agricultural financial support: provide income support to all landholding farmers families through Kisan Credit Card, irrespective of the size of holdings in the country. Supplement financial needs of farmers for procuring various inputs limited to agriculture and allied activities as well as domestic needs, providing additional income sources to keep farming remunerative and doubling farm incomes by 2022. Initiatives taken by the government to enhance the financial support of the farmers: increased subsidy on fertilizers to ensure fair prices for farmers, transport and marketing assistance for specified agricultural products to mitigate the freight disadvantages on international component. Next is Farmer Connect portal for farmers, food producing organizations or food producing centers, cooperatives to interact with exporters, assistance to agriculture products exporters under the export promotion schemes of Agricultural Producers Export Development Authority or Marine Producer Export Development Authority and tea boards, etc. Under central government, all of these boards or authorities agree stack to build a digital data stack of information like the land records. Other schemes: Kisan Credit Card, PM Kisan, PM Fasal Bima Yojana, Interest Subvention Scheme, PM Kisan Man Dhan Yojana, PM ASA, Kisan Suvidha App. So these are the initiatives taken by the government to enhance the financial support of the farmers. What are the way forward? What are the constraints regarding the financial support? Increasing farmers' distress due to rising input cost, low productivity, indebtedness, monsoon vagaries, lack of remunerative output prices, etc. Lack of farmer database, increasing difficulty in identifying beneficiaries. Next is the inadequate financial room available to government results in creation of a trade-off between farmer support and agricultural investment. One size fits all approach. There is only state government or central government, and there is no reforms in the local government. Lack of farmers awareness regarding various schemes and programs, or one size fits all means the governance or federal structure could be decreased. The dependence upon non-institutional sources for credit requirements. So keep this in mind. What are the way forward to enhance the financial support to the farmers? Strengthen the institutional and digital infrastructure, gradually transitioning the all subsidies to the process of direct benefit transfer. Improve irrigation facilities through drip and irrigation technology, warehousing and cold storage to double farmers' income and preservation of food grains as well as horticultural crops. Support agricultural research and development to raise crop production and overcome climate change impact. Next is adopt bottom up strategy instead of top to bottom strategy with region specific schemes and interventions. Increase awareness among farmers on various schemes. Promote healthy credit culture and address distortion in the agricultural sector. Create a real-time dynamic distress index of farmers. Other efforts like farmer distress index to act as an early warning system to identify stress. So keep this in mind regarding the financial support of the farmers. What are the context of minimum support price? So Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approved an increase in minimum support price for 6 rabi crops for 2023-24. Increase in MSP is in line with Union Budget 2018-19 announcement of fixing MSPs at the level of at least 1.5 times of all India weighted average cost of production. What are the context about minimum support prices, or what is the minimum support prices? Price support mechanism that acts as a safety net given to the farmers to ensure guaranteed prices and assured markets for their products. So you can define the minimum support price through this definition. MSP fixed twice a year on recommendations of the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, which is a statutory body, and then approved by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. So remember this. The Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices determines the MSP based on expenses incurred by the farmers on the basis of 3 to 4 factors, such as the final MSP is determined as a function of expense incurred or input, investment and imputed value of family labor involved. There have been demands for considering a different costing methods. Next is National Commission on Farmers, based on Swaminathan Committee, had also recommended that MSP should be at least 50% more than the weighted average cost of production. So keep this in mind. What are the significance of MSP? So helps government control the growth of crop that are low in production, protects farmers from price fluctuations and market imperfection, to encourage higher investment and production of agricultural commodities, and procurement for public distribution system under buffer stock for food security come from this policy. Support farmers from distress sales at severely low prices, and incentivizes production of certain crops, for example wheat, rice, thus ensuring that India does not run out of staple food grains. So these are significance of MSP. Next is how are MSP is determined. So when a farmer grows a crop, he incurs cost, some of it explicit and some implicit or unpaid. The Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices considers the following cost. The CACP considers three broad ideas about MSP. So A2 is covers all cash in kind expenses incurred by farmers on seeds, fertilizers, chemicals, hard labor, fuel, irrigation. So these are the inputs covered under A2. And A2FL means actual cost plus an imputed value of unpaid family labor, means the unpaid family labor in the FL, family labor. And next is C2. Under C2 that includes A2 plus FL along with revenues foregone on owned land rent and fixed capital assets interest. So this is C2. Keep this in mind, okay. The government considers A2 plus FL as production cost. This is the A2 and FL is the production cost. What are the issues associated with MSP? Procurement, lack of government machinery for procurement for other crops except wheat and rice, disparity among states. Farmers of states where the grain is procured completely by the government benefit more, while those in states that procure less are often affected. Ecological impacts. Increased production of wheat and paddy due to higher MSP has led to ecological issues such as decreased groundwater table salinity as seen in Punjab, as well as air pollution around the NCR region when the stubble burning happens around Haryana and Punjab region. Fiscal burden. In 2020-21 food subsidy bill was nearly 30% of net tax revenue of the central government, reflecting huge financial burden on the government middlemen. MSP-based procurement system is dependent on middlemen, commission agents and APMC officials who rope in the maximum benefit, leaving farmer with low remuneration for the production. Make India's agri exports non-competitive. Mandatory MSPs will render India's agricultural exports non-competitive because the government's assured prices are way higher than both domestic and international market prices. And demand for legalizing MSP. Recently, several farmers' bodies demanded to legalize MSP. Legalizing MSP would put the government under a legal obligation to buy every grain of the crops for which MSPs are announced. Issues with legalizing MSPs. Fiscal burden. Some estimates suggest that legalizing MSPs will cost annually about 17 lakh crore, so it will be detrimental to the country's growth and development. Demand for other crops. If the MSP is legalized, there will be a demand to include other crops as well. Storage. Inadequate storage like cold storage or warehouses capacity for grains procured by the government at MSP leads to post-harvest losses and burden of the FCI. For cost diversification. Selling with stocks piling up, FCI will be forced to dump even more and the price will get further decreased. Such sale of agri product combined with the ban on purchase below the MSP directly from the farmers will then close all avenues for sale by the farmers. So these are the issues to legalize the MSPs. And next is, what are the way forwards? Increase diversification in procurement interventions. There is need to revisit the strategy on demand and supply, including public distribution system for balancing the nutritional security of the population. Next is deficiency price payment system. In this scheme, the government, rather than procuring from farmers, compensates farmers with cash transfers when the market price falls below MSP. Example, Bhavantar Bhugtan Yojana in Madhya Pradesh. Area planning. The cropping system should be tailored to local consumption patterns rather than for only getting the maximum price irrespective of the demand for the produce. Import support. Income support for many of non-staple commodities. The MSPs are announced with little or no procurement, thus A gradual movement to an income-based support system is needed. For example, PM Kisan Yojana, Center State Contributory Price Stabilization Fund. It should be established to insulate farmers from a significant fall in prices either due to domestic factors or global trade factors. And next is the International Year of Millet 2023. So this can be asked in upcoming mains because it has been asked in 2022 paper. So remember this, the International Year of Millet. About International Year of Millet 2023, the United Nations 2021 has adopted India's proposal to declare 2023 as the International Year of Millet. Opportunities to the International Year of Millet will be increase global production, efficient processing and better use of crop rotation, promote millets as a major component of the food basket, promote research and development on millet. So next is what are the context. The Food and Agriculture Organization or FAO of United Nations organized an opening ceremony for the International Year of Millet 2023 in Rome, Italy. So keep this in mind. The organization held in Rome, Italy. About millets. Millets are diverse family of small grain cereals, processed family, indigenous to various parts of India. They are popularly known as nutri-cereals, and there are 65 to 75% carbohydrates, 15 to 20% dietary fiber, 7 to 12% proteins, and 2 to 5% is fats. What are the challenges in adopting of millet? Demand side constraints, lack of public awareness about nutritional benefit, preference for wheat among farmers and consumers, increased demand for ultra processed and ready to eat food. Next is supply side constraints, inconsistent supply and demand, suboptimal reach due to limited distribution and lack of market knowledge, shortage of processing industries. Next is millet based snacks are not yet a strong substitute for cheaper and seemingly tastier alternatives. So keep this in mind. And next is the what are the benefits of millets. First benefit is for the consumers, gluten free, beneficial for celiac patients, prevent type 2 diabetes, gastric ulcers or colon cancer, probiotic, eliminate problems like constipation, excess gas, etc. Next is reduce anemia, liver disorders and asthma. And for farmers, it will be cultivation is less risky since they are tolerant to extreme weather. Requirement of inputs like fertilizers, pesticides is less. Can be grown in intercrop of mixed crop cultivation and can be grown in wet areas as well as unfertile areas or soil desertification areas. So keep this in mind. Next is for ecosystem, promotes sustainable consumption and production, support climate action, facilitate zero hunger of sustainable development goals, promote growth, health and well-being. So keep this in mind that what are the benefits of millets. Initiatives taken to promote adoption of millet in international as well as Indian national level. National Year of Millets was observed in 2018. Increase in minimum support price to support millet cultivators. supply of seeds and inputs to farmers through farmer producer organizations. The 2022-23 Union Budget provided support for post-harvest value addition, enhancing domestic consumption and branding of millets. Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.2 mandate supply of millets at least once a week in midday meal scheme. National Food Security Mission provides incentives to millet cultivators for quality seed production or distribution, field level demonstrations and trainings, etc. Indian missions abroad tasked with branding and publishing Indian millets. So keep this in mind. What are the way ahead to enhance the millet adaptation? Raise awareness about their nutritional benefit to consumers, develop and fabricate machinery to improve the de-hulling of millets without causing a loss of the nutritional content. Create diverse seed banks to ensure the availability of planting material. Introducing the MSP for different varieties of millets suited to different agro-ecological zones. So keep this in mind. Next is food storage in India. What is the context? That is, Union Cabinet approved the Constitution and empowerment of an interministerial committee for the facilitation of the world's largest grain storage plant in the cooperative sector. Grain storage plan. Under grain storage plan, what is the aim of grain storage plan? The plan focuses on strengthening food security, reducing wastage and empowering farmers by creating godowns and agriculture infrastructure at primary agriculture credit societies level. Okay, so keep this in mind. Implementation. An interministerial committee will be constituted under the chairmanship of Ministries of Cooperation. Convergence of scheme. Various schemes have been identified for convergence under the plan. That is, schemes identified for the convergence. There are three ministries. That is, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, Agriculture Marketing Infrastructure Scheme, Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture, Submission on Agricultural Mechanization. Pradhan Mantri under the Ministry of Food Processing Industries. Pradhan Mantri Formalization of Micro Food Processing Enterprises Scheme. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana. So these under the Ministry of Food Processing Industries. And third is Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution System. Allocation of food grains under the National Food Security Act 2013. Procurement operations at minimum support price. So keep this in mind. Food grain management in India. Total production. India produces about 3,100 lakh tons of food grains a year. Next is food grain procurement mechanism. Centralized procurement system. The procurement of food grains in the central pool is undertaken either by the Food Corporation of India directly or by state government agencies procuring the food grains which hand over the stocks to FCI. Decentralized procurement schemes. Food grains are procured and distributed by the state governments themselves. So keep this in mind. And distribution of food grains. Central government through FCI has assumed the responsibility for procurement, storage, transportation and bulk allocation of food grains to the state governments. The operational responsibilities including allocation within the state, identification of eligible families, issue of ration cards and supervision of the functioning of fair price shops, etc. rest with the state governments. So keep this in mind. Need for an effective food grain storage system. Developing backward and forward linkages, lack of local storage systems, improper storage management and unscientific storage. That is, 80% of handling and warehousing facilities are not mechanized and traditional manual methods for loading, unloading and handling food grains and other commodities are used. Next is gaps in the number of storage facilities. Pepsi has insufficient grain silos and covered godowns with adequate storage capacities. Next is issues with cold storage. That India's cold storage capacity is unorganized and dominated by the traditional cold storage facilities. Keep this in mind. What are the government initiatives for augmentation of grain storage capacity? National Policy on Handling and Storage of Food Grains 2000, Gramin Bhandara Yojana for the construction or renovation of rural godowns to create scientific storage capacity. Warehousing Development and Regulation Act 2007 made the warehousing receipt a negotiable instrument. Private Entrepreneurs Guarantee Scheme to augment the storage capacity of FCI in private-public partnership model. Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana for development of cold storage facilities, specialized packaging units, warehousing facilities, etc. So keep this in mind. What are the way forwards? Reducing loss at farm gate because of building of aggregation unit at the village level with transport links. And next is the decentralization. Decentralization is more state that shared with states which are performing well, such as Haryana, Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, etc. Drying, aeration and temperature control. Measure and moisture and temperature determine how long the grain can remain in storage. Strengthening traditional methods. Removing covered and plinth storage. Promoting private participation. And using emerging technologies in food storage such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, etc. For preservation of food grains. Sensors-based data can be used to assess the quality of grains in real time and maintain temperature and moisture control variables accordingly. Next is allied sector. What are the allied sector of the agricultural sector? What is the context about allied sectors? 7.9% of CAGR of livestock sector during 2014-15 to 2020-21, contributing 30.1% in total agricultural gross value added in 2020-21 at constant prices. So this is the factual data. 24% of global milk production happens in India, contributing 5% of national economy and employing more than 8 crore farmers directly. 37% of India's total exports are contributed by the horticultural sectors. Third largest fish production country in the world, accounting for 8% of global production. So keep this in mind. Next is the key objectives of the allied sector or fisheries sector or others. The increasing livestock productivity and production in a sustainable manner while protecting the environment, preserving animal biodiversity, ensuring biosecurity and farmers' livelihood. Next is promote holistic growth of horticultural sector, augmenting farmers' income and strengthen ushering in a rainbow revolution to ensure balanced and holistic development in all the states. So remember rainbow revolution. What are the constraints about allied sector? Use of outdated and inefficient technology is the primary reason for low productivity of crops and livestock. Affordability of high-yielding breeds farm equipment becomes a significant constraint. A huge gap exists between demand for and supply of skills in agriculture, hindering diversification. Absence of adequate capital vis-a-vis technical adoption. Limited processing infrastructure leading to high post-harvest losses, low scale is a serious constraint on the adoption of improved practices in all the allied activities. What are the government initiatives taken for the robustment of allied sector? Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture, National Horticulture Mission, National Horticulture Board, Coconut Development Board. So keep this in mind. National Livestock Mission and Livestock Insurance Scheme, Kisan Credit Card for Animal Husbandry and Fisheries, National Program for Bovine Breeding and Dairying Development, Pasudhan Jagruti Abhiyan to learn latest practices and techniques in animal husbandry, Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Development Fund, National Livestock Mission to focus on entrepreneurship and breed improvement, National Animal Disease Control Program to control foot and mouth disease and brucellosis. So keep this in mind. What are the way forward to enhance the allied sector activities, modernize and strengthen the value chain across allied sectors, ensure social, physical and economic security for farmers engaged in allied sectors, governance, convergence of schemes in different allied sectors such as fishery sector and capacity building for farmers and fish breeders, encourage diversification to high value crops for enhanced income and employment generation, smart horticulture using techniques such as high density plantation, hybrid technology in vegetables and root stock technology in fruits, strengthen market for organic products, breed indigenous cattle with exotic breeds, reduce post-harvest losses by facilitating private investment and entrepreneurship in processing. So keep this in mind. Next is the aquaculture sector. 1 minute. Okay. What is the context about aquaculture sector? Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Dairying introduced the Coastal Aquaculture Authority Amendment Bill 2023. So Aquaculture Authority Amendment Bill 2023. Features of the bill. To amend certain provisions of the Coastal Aquaculture Authority Act 2005, which established the Coastal Aquaculture Authority for regulating coastal aquaculture scope. It expands the scope of the Coastal Aquaculture Authority Act beyond coastal aquaculture farms to cover all the verticals and activities of coastal aquaculture for its sustainable development. Next is regulation of allied coastal aquaculture activities. The bill prohibits coastal aquaculture activities in ecological sensitive areas, no development zones, and with coastal regulation zones. So keep this in mind. What is discrimination? The bill removes the imprisonment provisions of the Act for its contravention and replaces them with suitable monetary and other penalties. India and the fisheries sector. Status in India: third largest fish production, second largest aquaculture nation in the world, fourth largest exporter of fish and fisheries. 58.5 million people draw livelihood support from the sector. So keep this in mind about data factors. What are the significance of aquaculture? Food and nutritional security to country, large population, delivery of ecosystem services by filtering water and sequestering carbon, important source of foreign exchange. So keep this in mind. Next is the government initiatives regarding the aquaculture sector. Fisheries and Aquaculture Infrastructure Development Fund, Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, Production Linked Incentive Scheme for Food Processing Industries, 100% FDI is allowed through automatic route in pisciculture and aquaculture, inclusion of fisheries and fish farmers under Kisan Credit Card Scheme, National Policy on Marine Fisheries 2017. So keep this in mind. What are issues with aquaculture? Habitat loss via effluent runoff, siltation of nearby areas or other knock-on effects, Aquaculture farms create a risk of entanglement for marine wildlife and can pose a barrier to migrations. Water pollution, chemicals and waste products in aquaculture effluent can cause toxic algal blooms, eutrophication, and oxygen-free dead zones in the water. So keep this in mind. Introduction of non-native species in wild population compete with or displace native species or interbreed with wild populations, affecting those populations' survival. Unsustainable practices. Fishery resources continue to decline due to overfishing, pollution, poor management, and other factors. So these are the some issues regarding the fisheries sector. What are the way forward? A responsible aquaculture policy will include blue transformation because support resilient in aquatic food systems and ensure fisheries and aquaculture grow sustainably, protecting small scale farmers that do not display small scale fishers by privatizing coastal zones or creating other inequities. Global fisheries management. Improving global fisheries management remains crucial to restore ecosystem to a healthy and productive state and protecting the long-term supply of aquatic foods. Technical innovations. Focus priority areas for innovative aquaculture practices are aquafields and feeding, digitalization and promotion of efficient and pro-environmental practices. Next is about new agreement on fisheries subsidies under WTO. Prohibition on subsidies contributing to illegal, unreported and unregulated fisheries under Article 3 of the WTO. Prohibition on subsidies for fishing or fishing related activities regarding overfed stocks. Article 4. Prohibition on all subsidies to fishing and fishing related activities in areas outside the jurisdiction of the coastal members and non-members. Okay, so these are the agreement between WTO and the fisheries subsidies in India. A related news: WTO member to formally submit its acceptance of the WTO's new agreement on fisheries subsidies. Okay, so these are the some context regarding the agreement on subsidies. Okay, on benefits of the new agreement on fisheries subsidies: curbing illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, protecting overfed stocks and protecting unregulated high seas, no prohibition on development subsidies, okay, and subsidies for rebuilding overfed stocks. So these are the some benefits regarding the subsidies agreement between WTO and its member countries. So this is the fourth lecture. Here I will end because of 2 to 3 topics will be covered in the last and next lecture. So if you like the video, then comments if you have any query. Okay, so thank you very much. Have a